Welcome to Bankruptcy, Through the Looking Glass, with Barry Levine.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Through the Looking Glass with Barry Levine. I'm Matt Skye. Barry is an experienced bankruptcy attorney with nearly 43 years in practice, focusing on helping individuals from all walks of life navigate financial challenges. Join us as we explore his insights on debt relief, bankruptcy, and financial recovery. Barry, thanks for joining us.
How are you?
Doing well. So let's get into natural disasters. How do natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, etc., contribute to increased bankruptcy filings?
In my experience, up here in Massachusetts, in the rest of the world it may occur, but up here in Massachusetts, I think most disasters are covered by government insurance. And you don't necessarily see, at least my experience, a flood of debtors from, like a few years ago, there was the issue with the gas lines exploding or something like that up in north of Boston. I think most of the people had to wait, but they eventually got insurance coverage. What you do find is the people that maybe were denied coverage coming in, but, no great groundswell of this isn't like New Orleans or Texas or anything like that. Massachusetts, you may have a blizzard. Yes, now we have tornadoes and things, but the natural disasters somehow don't necessarily, even though they occasionally close down the state for no reason at all, don't incapacitate us that much.
Would you say that's the most common one, the blizzards, or I guess maybe hurricanes too, right?
I've been here through the blizzard of 78, and we've had a few snowstorms. They seem to be getting worse. But I don't necessarily, ultimately, it's people, we don't run out of food. We don't, it's not that kind of thing. It's not like if you live in Florida, we have friends who prepare for hurricane season. They store water and food and this. I remember there was a guy I knew who owned a small grocery store, and he used to love it when the people would come out before the snowstorms and they would stock up on frozen food. And he said, well, what were they going to do when the electricity went out?
Right. Interesting point.
Wait till it thawed out. It's like, even in the blizzard of 78, the supermarket was open the next day. So, I don't necessarily think, in my experience, disasters and things along those lines have pushed anything. I mean, more like it would be business downturns. People are unemployed. Now, you hear about all the political bullshit, but, talking about the unemployment rate is this, and when 4 years ago it was this, and, in my experience, 2024 has been the busiest I've ever been from a bankruptcy point of view. So the economy may be great. I don't know who all these people are that are coming through the door, but, I've been filing bankruptcies for people in their 80s and people in their 20s. And, the economy's great, unemployment is down, but not by what's coming through. So I don't, to me, that's more of a crisis. Maybe somebody should analyze what's causing that, but like I said, when I have people who are on Social Security being forced to file a bankruptcy, it's tragic. And, I'm not a very sympathetic guy, but it's a terrible thing. My mother used to say Ashanda. In Yiddish, it's a shame. And it really is, and I can't tell them, hey, you're 85 years old. The odds are you'll be dead before the creditors come ever get you. It all comes down to, as we said before, it comes down to the anxiety of their situation. They're looking for peace of mind. And, once we get retained and we file a bankruptcy, it all goes away. Sometimes when we get retained and it goes away, we never see the debtor again. But, we've done a good job. The creditors stop bothering them.
No, you're right. No way to bother them beyond the grave. Barry, what are some specific legal considerations for individuals filing for bankruptcy due to natural disasters?
I don't really think it's any different than any other person. I mean, if they're filing for bankruptcy as a result of a natural disaster, somewhere along the line, that natural disaster created debt for them that they were unable to deal with. Very often, like I said, going back to with the natural gas, they had houses exploding up there. You're going to pay a mortgage when your house is just bricks and sticks. I mean, things like that. And to stop a bank from foreclosing. But I don't necessarily think that, a natural disaster, really results in any debt is debt. It's really, from my perspective, a question is the debt that you're creating dischargeable debt or non-dischargeable debt? But otherwise, getting into that is like people who use their mortgage to pay off, they use their house to pay off creditors. You're taking exempt debt and paying off debt that you could discharge. But again, I don't see that, there's any, especially in Massachusetts, to natural disasters now.
So just on that point, we talked about this a bit in the last episode. Are there any assistance programs available for people who are filing for bankruptcy when it comes to a natural disaster?
There must be, but beats the hell out of me. It's not something I've been involved with. Usually when the client comes to me, whatever it is, and we're dealing with having to file a bankruptcy. There may be government programs out there. I mean, during natural disasters, you'll find that, FEMA, something like that takes care of that stuff. You'll see ads in the local papers, but it's not something that I would necessarily send somebody to unless they happen to come to me and the problem was still existent. But, usually when they come to me, all is said and done.
So as we explore more special situations for bankruptcy, let's touch on student loan debt. Why is student loan debt so uniquely challenging?
Well, up until I think 1997, student loans were discharged, and then it became based on need, whether you had the certain characteristics of somebody who couldn't afford to pay the student loans. Recently, I used to tell debtors that the only way to get rid of student loans was to die. I mean, the bottom line. Because in my experience, in the 43 some odd years, one time a woman wanted to go to law school. She had 6 children on the way to going to law school, and she had MS. And the feds were nice enough to discharge her student loans because she couldn't go to law school and basically couldn't take care of her kids. But, that was a rare situation. In the past, I'd say 6 months or a year, from what I understand, the feds have been looking at student loans a little differently. Not necessarily agreeing to a total discharge of the student loans, but looking at the effort the person made over the years to pay the student loans, and then looking at their financial situation and, vis-a-vis their bankruptcy, a current financial statement, if you will, and then agreeing to modify the loans, forgive some of the balances. I haven't necessarily experienced any of this myself with debtors of mine, but the seminars I've been to indicate that the U.S. attorneys, what happens is you submit an affidavit of the debtor as to their financial circumstances, and the U.S. attorney comes back with a response as to how they're going to deal with the student loans. And then, you can either agree to whatever proposal they make or look to discharge them, which is very difficult to do.
Do you see any major legal developments down the pipeline in terms of student loan debt?
Well, my hope is that at some point they become dischargeable again. I mean, all the programs, the example I've given, with Biden's forgiveness of debt, whatever program he was putting forth. I had a young couple in here. They were both had masters in social work. They were making combined about $98,000 a year. They had 2 young babies, over $400,000 worth of student loans. And Biden's plan would have reduced that to $380,000 worth of student loans, which what would that have accomplished? I mean, and that they're, being social workers, unfortunately, what's the odds of them ever being in a position to pay those student loans off?
Obviously not financial advice, but do you have any insights into how people can most effectively pay those off, since it doesn't apply to bankruptcy law?
Well, I know my own student loans were these 7-year student loans that took 14 years to pay off. My wife's took a little bit longer. The only way, the best way is to have independently wealthy parents so you don't have to take out student loans. When I went to college, you don't want to know what tuition, room and board was $1,000 for the year. Now at $50,000 a pop, they're better off taking the money and doing something else. But, if you need to take out student loans, the one thing I will say, and it seems to be an overriding factor in how the government is now looking at these things is, and it goes back to it being an ostrich and ignoring everything, is you have to make a good faith effort to try to pay them, contact them. I can't make the payment. You can't just ignore them because you're not going to get any brownie points for ignoring them in the process that you have to go through. And they also want you, if you have undeferred, periods, to be making a payment or so. Because, again, that goes back to your good faith. You need to show a lot of good faith and to consider some of this forgiveness stuff.
How does it apply when it comes to technical schools? Is that the same as a student loan for a college?
If the student loan you took out was federally guaranteed, yeah.
So there's really no way
out. Different.
And when you speak to good faith, maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, if you have a student loan, you should, they offer various programs to consolidate them, to refinance them. They want to see that you're trying to avail yourself of these various programs and not just, I'm not paying them, ignoring them too. It just had a case of getting back to 85-year-old debtors, grandma who went through her Chapter 7 and got a discharge. She forgot that she had guaranteed her granddaughter's student loan. And her granddaughter, in a show of defiance, decided to stop paying her student loans and not talk to grandma and not talk to her father. And grandma is now settled with a $65,000 student loan that hopefully that she had no knowledge of, but hopefully will be able to get the feds to be kind to her about.
When someone passes away, can any of those debts transfer to the next generation, or is that it?
I'm sure the creditors would love that to happen, but, it's like if there's a lien on a house and it's owned by husband and wife, and the lien's against the husband and title passes to the wife, the lien no longer attaches to anything because the title is now in the wife's name. So no, I think there's a lot of confusion about that, but no, it doesn't, unless you've signed a guarantee.
So on the senior citizens issue, what are some of the unique challenges seniors face when filing for bankruptcy?
The things they face are the same as anybody else. I mean, I've had seniors with debts in amounts you wouldn't believe. The thing is, you have to wonder how they live in general. Because some of them are making $800 on Social Security and, they're living in assisted living or, city housing. But how do you live on that? That's their only income. And, it doesn't surprise me that they incur debt. I mean, how else are you going to live? I mean, a credit card is an easy way. You want to put food on the table. I go to Stop and Shop or something like that. Well, I pay for my food. I marvel at it is more an issue of how they get by and what they live on. Every once in a while you get somebody that has this pension, that pension, the other pension. But all too often it's people on Social Security. And, it's how are they living?
You were mentioning that a lot of your clients now are senior citizens. How much of an uptick have you seen?
To me, it's been amazing. And, a lot of it, the feedback I get from the clients is that it's because the creditors are being very aggressive with these people. And, I'm elderly myself, but when you hear the story about dealing with elderly people and, I remember somebody called my mother. The scam was that her grandson was in jail someplace, and they need bail money, but my nephew, my mother's grandson, lives in Italy. He wasn't in whatever place they said, but that's how they take advantage of them. And, when creditors call, and they berate, for lack of a better word, these people, what's the reaction going to be? They'll give a credit card just to shut the guy up.
We touched on this just a little bit, but can you detail for us how senior citizens can protect their retirement funds and manage healthcare costs during a bankruptcy?
If they have money in a 401k or a separate pension, an IRA, 99.9% of the time that's exempt. Social Security can't be touched for the most part. Pensions, it's very difficult. And from a practical point of view, again, that's what I don't understand is, the creditors, what would they ultimately get from somebody on Social Security if they ultimately took them to court through one of these SP processes I was talking about? A judge would probably look at the creditor and say, hey, the person's 82 years old. Come back in a year. Let's see if they're still around. Or order them to pay $20 a month. How can you order them to pay anything? They have no money. It's probably all exempt. I find it's unfortunate for them to have to file a bankruptcy.
So, Barry, as we wrap up, do you have any major takeaways for our listeners?
Well, when the aliens land, maybe there'll be a big uptick in bankruptcies. But I can't emphasize enough that I say it all too often. It is what it is. You can't get. There's just so much they can do to you, and you have to be able to. It's easy for me to say to have a thick skin, but you can't let them bother you. I mean, we're only talking about money. It's not your health. It's not anything more than that. It's, I owe this bank $4,000. They'll survive. What are they going to do to me?
I think that's a great point to wrap up on. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to Through the Looking Glass with Barry Levine. For more information or to connect with Barry, visit levineslaw.com. Barry, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Good to be here.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.